Hi everyone, my name is Steph. Welcome back to my home. Today I am very excited to share with you this Get Ready With Me game review based on Tears of the Kingdom, the new Legend of Zelda title that came out just over a week ago, and it has shook the world, and for good reason. This video will be spoiler-free of all story elements, but I will be discussing some gameplay mechanics and different features of the game, so keep in mind you might learn some things, but I'm not going to spoil the story for you. I have played somewhere around 60 hours, and I've completed one main quest dungeon, so I've barely scratched the surface of this game. It is enormous, but I definitely have enough of a handle on this game, just with Tears of the Kingdom, but also as a lifelong fan of Zelda, to talk to you about the game and whether or not I think you should give it a try. All of the game footage I'm going to be sharing I recorded in the Gerudo Desert region, but keep in mind that there are a multitude of environments and biomes, ranging from snow-peaked mountains to low grasslands to ancient city ruins and everything in between. There are so many different places to discover in Tears of the Kingdom, not just the desert that I'm going to show you, but the desert is one of my favorite places because of the sick culture that lives there. The Gerudo. Adore them. We love women. While we get into the video, please ask any questions you have about the makeup or about Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, any game in the franchise, whatever. Ask it in the comments. Let's get together and chit chat down there about whatever is on your mind. But without further ado, let's get started on my bare face and talk about the game. To get started, we're gonna keep our hair out of our face with this adorable beer can and this 8-ball wearing a cowboy hat. These are from my incredible friend, Hayley Elsaesser. I'll post a link to her shop in the description. She makes some very cool things, accessories, garments, home decor. Check her out, she's amazing. But to get started, I am going to be talking about the game feel and the exploration in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. In terms of makeup, getting started, I'm going to start with my primer, which is the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer with 4% niacinamide. Love this, feels like glue on my skin and just great for my skin type in general. And then for foundation, I'm using my Il Makiage Custom Foundation. I thought this was going to be silly. It turns out the color is amazing, and this is from their Woke Up Like This formulation. I don't know how this stuff works, but I love this. I took a chance on it and I love it. Now, like I said, game feel and exploration. Tears of the Kingdom, like every Zelda game, has that gorgeous Zelda identity, and it is done so well and so thoroughly. Some people on the internet like to talk shit about Nintendo's graphical capabilities, but here's the thing. I really truly believe that if your game is fun, you don't need photorealistic graphics, and in fact, to rely exclusively on photorealistic graphics can really hinder your game being a fun experience. So pay no mind to the people online that trash talk Tears of the Kingdom's graphics, because it's not about the graphic fidelity, it's about the art direction. And that's where you get really, really great successes in video game art design. Tears of the Kingdom is amazing for that. There's even tons of voice acting in this game. It is a very immersive experience. As immersive as a third-person role-playing game can be. And make no mistake, while there aren't exactly like character level up, stat distribution, gear with stats sort of things going on, this is very much a role-playing experience where you're playing as Link. Similar to Breath of the Wild, it does diverge from the more classical and traditional Zelda dungeon, puzzle kind of formula. This stays true to Breath of the Wild, but builds on it in so many ways. And in relation to game feel, there were also some folks before the game launched that talked about how it should just be a DLC for Breath of the Wild, and this is like an awful cash grab. And this game is the farthest thing from a cash grab. Took them 7 years to build this game in the same engine, sure, but despite that, it is an amazing success, and it feels so much more than Breath of the Wild. It doesn't feel like the same game with new stuff in it. It feels like a new game with the same setting. On the note of soundtrack, I am actually using tracks from the game in this video, so if you hear some music, that is what you're hearing. I'll put a link to a playlist of all of the tracks on the soundtrack below in the description if you want to go listen to it for yourself. It's got some cool stuff in there. It's very cozy. For concealer, I always use my Lise Watier concealer portfolio. I've used this exact product since I was like 12 years old. I'm using this sort of brightening shade down here. Yeah, that one. This one. Under my eye area mostly, and kind of where I would brighten with concealer. Now with exploration, Tears of the Kingdom, listen, if you thought Breath of the Wild's exploration was great, Tears of the Kingdom just fucking blows it up. Here's the thing, going into it, I was like, oh, there's a few sky islands, no big deal. What Tears of the Kingdom actually has is 3 separate layers to your entire world map. You have the surface of the world, which is populated by, your stables, your towns, wide open plains, things like that, monster bases, the usual, but it also has tons and tons and tons of caves that were added all over the map. Not only caves, but also wells that serve and function like caves. So there's so many sort of subterranean areas on the surface level of the map. They've also taken stables and they've kind of expanded their functionality a little bit. You can still, of course, board, take your horse. If you didn't play Breath of the Wild, actually, this is something great. You can find a wild horse in the wild, you tame it, you befriend it, and you board it at a stable and it's yours. You get to name it, you get to equip it with different kinds of gear. It's very, very cute. If you are a horse girl, there is room for you in this game, okay? Along with that standard functionality, they've turned stables into sort of crossroads inns and quest locations. So there's actually an entire quest chain with a character that is totally adorable that involves you going around to different stables and reporting for a newspaper, which is super cute. And basically you can trust that if you're encountering a stable, you're gonna find something to do. It's a great checkpoint in your adventure. There's also the sky, and the sky islands are kind of widely distributed, and I myself in my gameplay have not done a ton of stuff in the sky, but I have encountered some cool puzzles, some shrines, and some cool things that are sort of like diving time trials where you dive from an extremely high height and you time trial your way through these rings, sort of like World of Warcraft dragon riding. So there's an added layer of gameplay there, and there's lots of mysterious things about the sky, lots of characters kind of drawing your attention to it, places that I haven't been that I have tons of questions about. So it's very, very interesting and unique kind of layer to the map. There is one more really cool thing about the map and exploration, and that is the third layer, the depths, which I'll chat about while I do my contour. This is a Fenty Beauty Matchsticks contour stick. And this is the shade Amber. I adore this thing. It's everything I want out of cream contour, okay? Now, the depths is a very interesting location. I mentioned earlier that there's subterranean caves on the surface layer, and the depths are an additional layer way below Hyrule. And this is something that Zelda has never done. It is an extremely unique location, and it takes what is kind of a cozy, fantastical, whimsical Zelda experience on the surface and in the sky. You go to the depths, and it is sort of a horror take on Zelda. Think about like complete and utter blackness, deep below the earth, dark creatures and dark magic. It's very creepy, but the game rewards you for exploring there, and you're able to actually illuminate the depths through the use of what are called, I believe, light roots. And the depths map, unlike these sky islands, actually extends pretty much under the entirety of Hyrule. It's not one-to-one exactly expansive as the surface level. Every single region in the map will have a large area for you to explore. In the depths, there's depths quests and experiences and creatures and rewards that you can only get down there, and it's a really core part of your gameplay experience. You're not going to be down there more than you're on the surface, but you're going to be down there quite a bit, and there's some cool stuff going on there. One example I have is for a quest I was doing, I had to go around the overworld and drop items. I had to drop them down into these chasms that went all the way down into the depths, and you dive. When you're going through that like column of blackness, there comes a point about halfway where this enormous brass instrument sound comes in, and it kind of just like, ooh, it kind of shakes you. It's cool. It's frightening, and it's meant to be frightening. And so I had to go around the overworld, drop these things into the depths, and then bring them to a central location in the depths using kind of like these minecart things. And then that ended with meeting a kind of fairly important story character, really cool boss fight. It was a very rewarding experience. So overall, I think the depths add a really cool layer of mystery and gameplay to Hyrule in Tears of the Kingdom. Something they've expanded on from Breath of the Wild for the surface level is actually your temperature maintenance. So in this game, you're going to have to pay attention to how hot or cold Link is, and then manage that with things like gear, consumables, or food that you cook for yourself. And characters in the world are always trying to like give you hints and teach you recipes and give you resources that you can use to manage your character's well-being. And it's very wholesome, and it's a fun little survival element that's added in there for you to consider. And something that happens is if I don't stop to cook often enough, I notice when I'm running out of good and useful consumables. But what's awesome is you can learn, how you like to use these different consumables, and then you have them on hand. So for example, something I like to do is rather than consuming, say, ice fruit, I will save it and use it with my bow and arrow. You can fuse it to your arrow, which I'll talk about more later. Any item you pick up in the world has a multitude of uses with this new crafting system. And I use it to freeze enemies rather than use it to cook. And then if I need something to cool my character down in a hot environment, I use a chill shroom instead because it doesn't have the same effect when I shoot it on an arrow. And these kinds of intricacies about the objects in the world are things that you learn as you experience it, and it makes everything feel really rich in terms of world building. It's very cool. The next thing I would like to talk to y'all about is narrative delivery. So like I said in the intro, I'm not going to be giving any story spoilers, but I think I can still talk about the way that the game delivers story elements and narrative elements to you as a player and how that feels. Because I am a narrative girl. I love my narrative. I write narrative. It's my day job and I adore it. So I want to talk about narrative. If you are familiar with Breath of the Wild, you may, and this really isn't spoilers, this is all over the marketing and it's all over the front of the game. It's everywhere. So please don't get mad at me for this. I promise you, it is not a spoiler. You may remember from Breath of the Wild, if you played it, the Zonai, which was this mysterious ancient civilization that was kind of all over the region, and it was kind of like you were supposed to notice that that was happening, and there was characters drawing your attention to it. So Tears of the Kingdom kind of answers the Zonai question. What is that? So there's a lot of this ancient civilization that comes up. And if you're familiar with Zelda lore, you would remember in Breath of the Wild, there was a big focus on the Sheikah, who were already an ancient civilization. Kind of in contrast to the present day, these are more ancient. And it's really cool. It's that like precursors kind of story. And I love those things so much. Before I continue, I'm doing some cream highlighter. This is a Nude by Nature product. I don't know if I've seen this brand online very much, but I love this product in particular. It is a cream highlighter stick in the shade Champagne. So in general with the narrative, you're dealing a lot, like I said, with that ancient civilization. And that is very, very cool. And the way that the game delivers narrative information to you is great, actually. I am comparing it a lot to Breath of the Wild, but that is kind of natural because it is a direct sequel in the same engine. It's very, very similar, but it improves on a lot of things, like I said. So in Tears of the Kingdom, what you can expect a lot of are voice acting and cutscenes, and it is really rich. It's really great. You experience it very regularly if you're progressing through the game. You're just wandering around. You will encounter voice acting and cutscenes. It's really nice. And you also encounter a lot of recurring characters. You'll be going about your business, you'll find a side quest, you'll complete it, great. Then maybe a couple of regions later, you stumble upon the same characters in a different predicament, and they remember you, they remember that you helped them. There's this like real good pace to all of the different narrative interactions that you get to have. Now the cutscenes, interestingly enough, are dispersed throughout the world by something called Tears of the Dragon. And these are these little puddles that you will find inside of these large geoglyphs, which are large art installations, for lack of a better word, paintings on the surface of the earth. Now, what I just said is not a spoiler, but you can spoil yourself if you go about picking these up willy-nilly. And this is, I guess, I don't know if it's a complaint so much, maybe a warning. The Tears of the Dragon cinematics are numbered. They go 1 through 18. And it is entirely possible for you to stumble upon, once you're out of the tutorial section, to stumble upon number 18 first, or number 17. Those have enormous spoilers. So what I'd recommend for you is there is kind of a quest line involving these geoglyphs, and I'd recommend that you follow it because you will encounter, I haven't done this myself, but I've been told you encounter a map that describes the order of them, I think. I don't know that for a fact because, again, I haven't done it. And if you can avoid getting these out of order significantly, I would. I would avoid getting the last ones towards the beginning of your gameplay. Oh, by the way, I'm setting my under eyes with my Dermablend translucent powder on the butt of my sponge. Then I'm just gonna grab some more of that on my powder brush. Set the rest of my face. Gotta keep it all locked in, you know? Now, I mentioned the side quests earlier. There's a lot of these, and they're kind of split into things called side adventures and side quests. And the side adventures are a little bit more overarching. It's things that will take you multiple zones to complete, and they have a kind of larger and wider narrative to share with you and usually a larger reward. Sometimes they also have a little bit more story to impart. There's also main quests, and the main quest is, interestingly, it's not just one main quest. There are many different main quests that feed into the overall main story. So these things are all organized really well in a menu called the Adventure Journal, and I find it really handy. I really like it. And I find the side adventures are a really fun way to kind of guide yourself through the world if you don't want to tackle the main quest right away. But through all of these different quests and through the items that you encounter in the world, you get tons of world building. It's a lot of fun. Zelda, of course, has an extremely storied history as a game franchise, and there has been decades of world building put into this. And it's not just like low effort world building. if you're a Zelda fan, you know that there is a sacredness and a mysticism to the way that Zelda lore is distributed to the audience. It is very carefully cared for. There is no willy-nilly silliness that gets injected into that lore. Even if the game feels a bit silly, the storytelling is very tight and it feels very mythical, and it takes itself very seriously, even in silly moments, in a way that feels really good. And I think a really special component to the Zelda narrative identity is that balance between darkness and levity. And I think Zelda as a franchise does that better than most IPs that I've seen. And I find it very, very inspiring for that. And you'll often see people arguing about what game is the Darkest Zelda. Is Tears of the Kingdom going to be the Darkest Zelda? Is it going to be edgy enough to validate my interest in it as an adult? And for those kinds of things, I say, you know what? Maybe it's not the darkest, because all of them have darkness and all of them have light. And that's literally the point of Zelda, okay? All that to say, Tears of the Kingdom has a pretty balanced narrative in terms of levity and darkness. It's got a really, really moving and serious kind of tone, but then something funny and lighthearted will happen and it doesn't feel out of place. By the way, I'm just applying a little bit of bronzer along my cheek area. I'm not actually doing any blush today because I want to keep it kind of like a beige, neutral kind of palette behind what I'm going to be doing next. This is a Fenty Beauty bronzer in the shade Private Island. This thing is ancient. It's almost gone. I've had it since, I don't know, 2018. I'm still using it. Love it. Next, I want to chat with you about the progression systems, but first I want to call your attention to the fact that I'm drinking a sparkling water. And the reason for this is I've been posting about it on Instagram, because one day I posted just randomly, I was like, y'all, what do you think of sparkling water? Because I've heard it's polarizing, and I myself have had a polarizing experience with it. And the hatred was unbelievable. Opinions on sparkling water are pretty darn divided, okay? I used to think it was for ignorant rich people. And then I met my boyfriend, and his whole family drinks the hell out of sparkling water. And I had to reassess my judgments. But I'd love to know what your judgments are of sparkling water. Please judge sparkling water in my comments. However you naturally feel, just let it out, okay? Now, while I talk about progression systems, we're gonna do our eyes. I'm gonna prime them with a NYX eyeshadow primer, pretty standard. I'm on the lookout for a new eyeshadow primer. Like, I literally have no complaints, so I really should just keep using it because it's a great price point and it does the job, but I'm like, the novelty is worn off of this product, so I want a new one. So if you have eyeshadow primer recommendations, please let me know in the comments. I'm very curious. Now, when it comes to progression systems in Tears of the Kingdom, you have a few different lanes, I guess, that you're working on. And these are all gained through gameplay. It's not like another game where you might have experience points and then you spend those on character progression. This game rewards you with kind of items and currencies, more or less, for accomplishing specific tasks in the world. In the tutorial section of the game, you will gain different powers to kind of build out Link's repertoire of tools, which is very important. And you're not really done the tutorial until your entire power ring is full. So keep that in mind. If you're missing one of those powers, you're gonna have a harder time going throughout your experience. Beyond the tutorial, you'll encounter shrines, which will reward you with something called the Light of Blessing, I believe. Each shrine rewards you with one Light of Blessing, which you can then turn in at a goddess statue in exchange for more health or more stamina to perform actions in combat or climbing, running, exploration. Actually, it's very important for exploration. And then aside from that, there's also Korok seeds. And Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild were infamous because there was, I think, like 500 or 600 of them. And everybody was like, oh my God, I can't get them all. And you know what? You're not meant to get them all because there's so many so that you don't have to get them all. But if you're a completionist, you very well may end up trying to get them all. And you know what? I respect it, but I would recommend you don't do that to yourself unless you have a very good reason to. So you collect Korok seeds and you can turn those in for inventory expansions, upgrades to your inventory. So at the start of the game, you can only wield or hold on your character something like, I don't know, 8 weapons, maybe a bit less than that. I don't know the exact number. And in exchange for Korok seeds, you can increase the number of weapons, melee weapons, bows, or shields that you can hold at any given time. So you can have more tools at your disposal. And something to keep in mind is that weapons are not only used for combat. There are tools that you can carry on your person, like sledgehammers that you craft out of sticks and rocks or other objects in the environment. My favorite is a rusty claymore and a boulder. It's usually my sledgehammer, or torches or fans that will help you kind of achieve puzzles or do different things in the world. But between the shrines and the Korok seeds, you have pretty much your only progression systems that you're encountering while you're playing the game. Now, before I continue, I actually should tell you what I'm doing. I have mixed a few shades from my Makeup Forever Flash palette. I've mixed a bit of this turquoise, a bit of this white, and a bit of this yellow to create my own kind of turquoise, a slightly modified turquoise. And I'm gonna be putting this all over my lid and kind of blending it out around my eye area. And this is meant to evoke the color of Link's replacement arm that you'll see all over the marketing materials. It is extremely significant narratively and gameplay wise. So I'm pulling on that for the look today. Last thing I want to say about the progression system is actually the Korok seeds. And the Korok element of this game, you know what, for those of you that don't know, Koroks are cute little plant people, tiny little miniature plant spirits that in the world of Zelda, very few people can actually see and interact with. Link is one of those special people that can see them. And that is explained in some Zelda games. It's only lightly touched on in Tears of the Kingdom. What people have done to these Koroks and posted online is horrific. Now, I'm not saying I haven't done my own fair share of Korok torture. I will say it lost its fun for me immediately, but it can be very funny on the internet. You'll find them and they're exhausted and they're struggling, laying on their back, rolling around with their enormous backpack, and they're like, please, I need help to find my friend. Can you help me get to my friend? And they'll show you where their friend is. And you're expected to take them to their friend, to the other Korok somewhere else. In exchange, you actually get 2 Korok seeds to upgrade your inventory with, which is a great deal, actually. It's fantastic. But people have taken to torturing the shit out of these Koroks by putting them on a cross and walking them over in a horse-pulled carriage. Pulled? It's a word now. Or other things like attaching them to an object and then launching that object basically into outer space instead of towards their friend. Or people actually are trying to get them to their friend and they mean well, but what ends up happening is the contraption that they've attached them to get them to their friend with the crafting system, which I'll talk about in a minute, it just fails. Something goes wrong. It hits a rock and it falls off a cliff, and then you watch as this Korok tumbles into the sea, never to be found again. Now, it's not actually that serious. If you lose the Korok, you just kind of leave the area for a bit and it will respawn and you can try again. But the point is, the internet has been going wild, and you can find these all over TikTok, Twitter, and Reddit of the things that people are doing to these Koroks. And it's kind of created like an online community moment. Kind of live for it. I think it's adorable. But anyway, that's overall your progression systems. The game isn't super progression system heavy. You're not always trying to fill up a bar, and it actually kind of naturally rewards you with progress in these systems from you just playing the game the way that you want to, which is fantastic game design. 10 out of 10 in that regard. Which leads me to talking about the crafting and physics systems. This is where Tears of the Kingdom pops the fuck off, and it differentiates itself from every game ever released, okay? Yes, other games have crafting systems, okay? Other games let you build things, but none of them do it like this, and I'll tell you why. Tears of the Kingdom has a couple of skills, one called Ultra Hand. These are your powers that Link has that are core to your gameplay experience. Ultra Hand and Fuse are your crafting abilities. Through Ultra Hand, you can grab objects and attach them to other objects, so you can kind of build something. With Fuse, you can fuse things to your melee weapon or your shield. So for example, the sledgehammer thing I talked about earlier, you can fuse a boulder to a claymore and make a sledgehammer out of it. And it literally is a claymore with a boulder on the end. But where this shines beyond belief is the physics systems that Nintendo has managed to make work, because it's not just that you can take pretty much any movable object and attach it to any other movable object, and it will have weight to it and it will move in ways that make sense. So that's just one part. There's 2 other parts to this, and that is something called Zonai devices, which are basically machinery components that you can find in the world in different ways. Either they're in the environment and you can use them, or you can find them in something called a capsule, which I won't really get into because it's not super important for this. But the point is, you will always have access to Zonai devices in some way. And these will be things like fans that push, with wind, or there'll be things like fire emitters, or laser beams, or like a few different variations of wheel, different kinds of platforms that you can build machines out of. The possibilities are, at a glance, they might seem pretty simple, but the possibilities are literally endless. So you have these Zonai devices interacting with a really, really effective physics system. And then you also have what is basically a time system built into each individual object. So let's say you see something that is falling out of the sky. You can send it back up into the sky, but you can do that in combination with Zonai devices and fusing things together. So you can build a platform on top of a rock that's fallen out of the sky. You can build a platform with a spring on it that launches you up into the air while you're on a flying machine with fans on it. And all of this stuff will work in sync perfectly without a single bug. And it is mind-boggling that they have managed to do that. It is I absolutely destroyed my eyeshadow while I've been talking excitedly. Anyway, I haven't done anything too crazy with the crafting and physics systems simply because I find it a little bit overwhelming because of the number of options. I've done some cool stuff with the tools presented to me, but I haven't built, like, for example, something I saw online, a TIE fighter, a functional fucking TIE fighter that this person was flying around in. And some other examples are, one person built a dual drone combat system that, like, it has a flying drone and a land drone, and they fly in, and the drone will then automatically somehow drop the ground drone, which moves in on the ground and attacks enemies while the flying one shoots lasers. And the player built this, and it just works somehow. And it's not like you have to go in and, like, program its behavior. These parts just somehow work together, and it is mind-boggling. And all over Twitter, because I follow a ton of different game devs on Twitter, everyone is talking like, how did they do this? They are mind blown. By the way, the eyeshadows I've been using came out of this Natasha Denona gold palette that I got years ago. I've treated it like shit. It is so busted, but the shadows are still beautiful. That's where those came from. Game dev Twitter is just abuzz with excitement about how functional all of these systems work together. So this crafting system is the shining jewel of Tears of the Kingdom, and let nobody tell you any differently. And if you like kind of engineering your devices together in video games and solving the problem, here's the thing. Zelda has always been loaded with puzzles. It's a puzzle adventure game, more or less. Tears of the Kingdom gives you the most freedom the franchise has ever given you for ways to solve those puzzles. So you enter a shrine, which is a puzzle solving mini game, basically. They present you with different scenarios in each shrine, and you have to find a way to solve the problem. You can come up with your own solution with the tools that you have in your disposal and just do it your way. You don't have to do it the right way. There really isn't a right way. There's kind of a way that maybe the designer thought of, but that is certainly not the only way because of the power of the tools that the devs have given you in this game. I could talk about it forever. I mean, I'm talking about shrines, so let's talk about shrines and dungeons. I mentioned shrines in the sort of progression system part of this video. There's hundreds of these across the world map. Some of them are in the sky, some of them are on the surface, most of them are on the surface. Each of these shrines, like I said, is completely different, and each one presents you basically with a problem that you have to solve. Some of these will be combat problems where they'll take away all of your gear and you'll have to use only the tools that are inside of the shrine to defeat the enemies. Some of them are physics puzzles. A lot of them are physics puzzles, actually. That's the majority of what you'll find. And the rewards are always like, you collect enough of these, you can have more health or stamina. It's never like, oh, a unique weapon that never breaks coming out of a shrine. That's not really how it works. But the puzzles designs in these shrines are so well done. Each one will simultaneously make you feel incredibly dim and incredibly smart. Because when you find that solution or you find the solution that works for you, it's so rewarding each time. And they're always small enough that you're never gonna spend an hour in a shrine. And if you do, you probably should just take a break and come back another time with fresh perspective because you're probably too frustrated to know how to solve the problem at that moment. Just take a break, come back later. Usually shrines take me anywhere from like 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes. That said, I usually will have the help of my engineer boyfriend if I'm stumped and I can't figure it out. So maybe they would take me longer without him. All this to say, the world is populated with hundreds of these unique shrines that are basically just really good puzzles. Now, something else that's very much important to the Zelda franchise is dungeons and dungeon delving. That has been very core to the Zelda identity since its inception in, what, the 80s? I don't even know. A complaint that some people had about Breath of the Wild is it kind of tried something different with dungeons, where the dungeons were actually like giant moving robot creatures. But with Tears of the Kingdom, they return to form, and the dungeons are literally structures in the environment with ancient history and gadgets and different things going on. And at the time of recording this, I have actually only completed one dungeon, one main quest dungeon, and it was the one in the Gerudo Desert. and I had a blast. Each dungeon usually will focus on a specific sort of puzzle solving concept. So for example, it might revolve around finding ways to bounce light around a room with mirrors and finding creative ways to do that and solve these different puzzles. Another example might be using like heat to move objects around. And each dungeon, like I said, will usually focus on one of these concepts and really make it like a course in learning to solve those puzzles, which is a lot of fun, I think, because you get better as you progress through the dungeon in that skill, and it feels like, ooh, yeah, I'm learning something. That was my eyebrows, by the way, I just did with this NYX micro brow pencil in the shade brunette. And I'm now going to do my eyeliner with this Stila Stay All Day Waterproof Liquid Eyeliner in the micro tip variant, so it's a very fine tip. So these dungeons are fantastic, and then at the end of each dungeon, there's always a really cool, really big boss fight. And the great thing about Zelda boss fights is it's never a numbers game. It's never like, do I do enough damage? Like, have I leveled my character up enough? Have I grinded enough in this game to do enough numbers to kill this enemy? There is a component of that. Like, if you're trying to beat an end of dungeon boss with a wooden stick with nothing attached to it, you're gonna have a hard time. But generally, the game will put enough tools in your way that you shouldn't find yourself in that position. And instead, all of the boss fights in Zelda games are about player skill, learning the boss's patterns, and then beating them at it. Sometimes there's an element of like, oh, this boss is weak to lightning. If I use lightning on this boss, it will become vulnerable, or it will become stunned and I'll be able to do some damage to it. But there's always other things at play. Dodging mechanics, identifying a moment when it's at a weak spot where it's not going to be moving as much where you can hit it. Different things like that. And in that way, it actually kind of provides a little bit of the Elden Ring experience. Bloodborne, Elden Ring, Dark Souls experience where it's like, I had to learn to beat this boss, to be a good player and beat this boss. And that feels more rewarding than, say, I grinded enough numbers to kill this boss fast. And then additionally, you're always rewarded narratively for finishing a dungeon. So there's always going to be like a cutscene with some kind of narrative payoff as well. And the story of Link going through this experience is really good. So beating those dungeons and getting those payoff moments feels great. It matters to you as a gamer, to me as a gamer anyway. All that to say, the dungeons are good fun. And the shrines are like mini dungeons that they carry you forward and they keep your brain going. This game is great for just kind of teasing your brain and getting it thinking. This is not a game that you should play mindlessly. You should be paying attention and you should be focused if you can and enjoy it because it's fun. Now, before I talk about combat and weapons and the weapon system, I want to finish my eyeliner because it's going to be impossible to talk and do that at the same time. Now, to accomplish the secondary part of Link's replacement arm, it's that bright turquoise glow, right? And then it's got this golden kind of banding around it in specific sort of designs. So I'm trying to replicate that with this liquid glitter eyeshadow from e.l.f. So it's not going to be like super standout on its own. Now let's talk about the weapon system. So how it works in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is very much the same. You do not just have one weapon through the whole game. You have constantly shifting weapons that are constantly breaking and you have to keep on replacing them, which at a glance might sound like a huge pain in the ass, but I actually really have come to like it because again, it keeps you thinking creatively. With the fuse system, let's say I find a sword in the environment and the sword's kind of shit, but I have something called a Lizalfos horn in my inventory, and this Lizalfos horn is a yellow Lizalfos horn, which means it has lightning properties. So I can attach that to this kind of shitty sword and make an extremely powerful lightning sword that just blows things away. Rather than say finding that lightning sword in the environment, I get to make it myself. And in my opinion, that's additionally rewarding. And it gives this kind of layer of customization. You can also find weapons in the environment that have kind of bonus effects. So instead of being just like a claymore, it will be a claymore with empowered fusing. So whatever you fuse with it will be even better than normal, which lets you kind of strategize and think, okay, I'm not going to waste this one on a sledgehammer because I can mix it with something and get an incredibly powerful weapon for combat, and then I can take on that really hard enemy that I've been scared of trying. A lot of people are turned off by the weapon breaking system, but I think it's pretty cool. And I think when you get used to it, it's something that you don't necessarily notice or question. It is not as much of a pain to stay on top of as you might think. I'm gonna give my eyes a break and focus on my lips. I'm gonna line them with this e.l.f. Love Triangle lip liner in the shade Mauve. And then I'll be putting on this is an Old House Laboratories lip gloss in the shade Blaze. I don't know if they even make this anymore, but I love it. It's my favorite. Now, aside from the boss combat, which I've already talked about, the regular enemies are actually very similar. You will encounter enemies, like most of the enemies that I fight will hit me and I'll lose at least half of my health. Most of them. Some of them kill me in one hit, and I have like 10 hearts at this point where you start with 3. But there's always a way to defeat them in a smart way. You can outmaneuver them, and there will never be an enemy you encounter. Like, it might be hard to kill them with a stick, but you can do it eventually. And you can avoid taking damage if you dodge them well enough. You just have to learn their behavior and then work with that. But keep in mind that enemies will also pick things up in the environment. So let's say you approach an enemy camp and their weapons are laying on the ground. If you're sneaky, you can approach and steal those weapons and then attack. And then they won't have anything to fight you with but their hands, and they'll be weaker. Or maybe you take a brute force approach, you run in swinging, they end up grabbing a weapon, they might choose to hit you with it in melee, they might choose to whip it at you from a distance, and that could kill you. They might have explosive barrels. A big enemy might see an explosive barrel and they'll pick it up and try to throw it at you. Like, there's all kinds of things that can happen based on the environment where you're fighting the creatures, and I think that's really neat. But I think something really important is no matter what enemy you're fighting, when you defeat it, it will drop useful loot for you. It will drop the weapon it was carrying. It will drop usually a few monster parts, sometimes food items that you can then take and cook, which I didn't even talk about. You can cook these things into useful foods, elixirs, potions, and different types of things. You can even take, say, a horn that drops off of an enemy, attach that to your arrow with your fuse power, and shoot it at something to do devastating damage. Enemy element is also really important. So let's say you find an ice enemy and you fought a fire jelly. I think they're called fire choo-choos. And it dropped the fire choo-choo jelly, the red jelly. You can attach that to your arrow and shoot this ice enemy with it, and it might kill it in one hit because you've used the element that you got from that other enemy. So sometimes I'll end up just riding by enemies on my horse if I don't want to be bothered, but sometimes I'll stop because I'm like, no, if I fight that enemy, I'll get something really useful that I know I'm using a lot of. And then I mentioned, I didn't really talk about the cooking. That's one thing I do want to touch on before we end here. I think it's so cozy, and it's just one part of the game where, you know, you're going on this grand adventure, you're seeing all of this like scariness, this like devastation that's happened to the world through the story, and these sad, tender moments or different things that are happening, and you'll come across a staple, and there is a campfire with a cooking pot on it, and there are a couple of NPCs walking around and they're saying, stay with us, take your time, you know, or maybe there's somebody that needs your help, and then you go to the cooking pot and you spend your time cooking. It plays the cute sound. It's this cute little theme song that it plays. And you walk away from this stable with a new quest, a bunch of food in your backpack, some different elixirs for climbing, for stealth, for different things, and you're back on the road. And these like restful moments are really important, I think, to the gameplay loop and very memorable because you're always, it's not like stop and go in a bad way. It's like stop and go in a way that makes it very thoughtful to play this game. And that leads me to my overall thoughts. And I think, yeah, that really says it. I think if I had to give this game one word, I'd say it's thoughtful. From the gameplay loop, to the puzzles, to the way that you're rewarded as a player, from all the different forms of gameplay, this game is thoughtful. And even when it comes to the narrative, again, I'm not giving you spoilers, but Tears of the Kingdom does some things with the narrative a little bit different from past Zelda games in ways that are kind of significant. Because if you're not aware of this, every Zelda game has, not every Zelda game, but generally, it's about this trinity, Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf, and the Triforce of courage, wisdom, and power. And it's about, you know, history repeating itself again and again in different ways, in slight variations, but it's always the hero, Link, Princess Zelda, and the villain Ganon or Ganondorf, or some incarnation of darkness that represents power. Tears of the Kingdom, you know, I'm not saying that it totally shatters the formula. It doesn't, but it twists it in ways that are thoughtful. I'm just setting my face with this Urban Decay All-Nighter Spray. It's my absolute favorite, keeps things locked on. And also my mascara, I didn't tell you what it was. It is Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara. I love this stuff. It makes my lashes look so fluttery and gorgeous. I love it. So is it worth the price point? I think that's a fair question. It's an expensive game, okay? Here's the deal. Yes, it's expensive. It's also enormous. It is beautifully well crafted. It had like 0 bugs on release. It's an actual completed game, and it will occupy your time for a very long time. I think it's worth the money. because of just the sheer number of hours of enjoyment you can get out of it. When you do the math on it, it makes sense. But additionally, as a fan of game development, as a person in the game development world, as a lifelong gamer, Tears of the Kingdom does some incredible things mechanically behind the scenes as a piece of technology in the gaming world that I cannot understate how impressive it is. I think it is a must-have for gaming aficionados. And if you're a casual gamer and you're looking for something to sweep you away into another world and take you on a magical journey, it is also that game. So I think it has a little bit of everything for a little bit of everyone. And I think it's really special, and I would recommend it for sure. Absolutely. So thank you for following along with this look and this chit chat about Tears of the Kingdom. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you like the look. It's very dramatic, but you know what? I leaned into the color palettes in this game, and I think we pulled off something very cool. Again, it was inspired by Link's replacement arm, the turquoise glowing arm. Let me know in the comments what you think of Tears of the Kingdom if you've tried it, but try to keep it spoiler free for other people that might be wanting to give it a go. Basically, let other people in the comments know if they should try it or not, in your opinion. Let them know your thoughts, but keep it spoiler-free. Stay tuned next week for a Diablo 4 Lilith-inspired makeup look. It's not going to be a game review get ready with me. It's going to just be a straight-up inspired makeup video. We've got some very cool stuff planned for it, including custom props, different stuff like that. So make sure you tune in for that when it comes out. It's going to be very exciting. In the meantime, let me know what other games you might want to see inspired makeup looks for, or other games you think I should try and do a get ready with me game review inspired by as well. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, and I always like hearing recommendations from other people that enjoy video games. Until next time, just remember, video games are incredible fun, but do your best to balance your time. It is more important than I can state to take breaks, to take care of yourself and your responsibilities. That game is not going to go anywhere if you have it. It'll be waiting for you when you have time to return. So I'll see you next time. Very soon. I post daily on Instagram and I post once a week here on YouTube. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in my home, and I will see you again very soon. Bye! Mwah.